It started with a perfect sunny afternoon at the park, a black father pushing his giggling white daughter on a swing. But then came her, a woman with a sharp glare and a phone clutched in her hand. "Excuse me," she hissed. "Is that your child?" Before he could respond, she was already dialing 911, her voice loud and accusatory. "There's a suspicious man here with a little girl. I think she's in danger." But what she didn't know was that her assumption would unravel a truth so undeniable, so powerful, that it would leave her and everyone else reeling in shock. Before we jump into today's story, let us know in the comments where you're watching from. If you love powerful stories of justice, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share, so you never miss what's coming next. Now, let's get started. Marcus Hayes wasn't just any man at the park that day. To most, he was an ordinary father, dressed in a simple hoodie and jeans, his hands calloused from years of hard work. But behind his warm smile and gentle demeanor was a story no one cared to ask about. A story that shaped him into the man he was today. As he lifted his daughter, Lily, onto the swing, her laughter echoed through the park, lighting up the space around them. To Marcus, she wasn't just his daughter. She was his world, his reason for fighting through every storm life threw at him. But to others, to people like the woman glaring at him from across the path, he was a man who didn't belong, someone who didn't fit the image of a father to a little girl with soft blonde curls and big blue eyes. And as her judgmental gaze locked onto him, Marcus had no idea that this stranger's assumptions were about to unleash a chain of events that would test everything he stood for. "Excuse me, sir, is that your daughter?" The voice cut through the serene park like a shard of glass. Marcus turned to see the woman, arms crossed, her phone poised as if ready to record. Her tone wasn't curious. It was accusatory, loaded with the weight of assumptions she'd already made. Marcus stood tall, his voice calm but firm. "Yes, this is my daughter. Is there a problem?" She didn't answer, not directly. Instead, she leaned down, her eyes narrowing as she addressed Lily. "Sweetheart, are you okay? Do you know this man?" Lily's innocent face scrunched in confusion as she clutched Marcus's hand tighter. "Of course, he's my daddy," she said, her voice high and indignant. But the woman wasn't convinced. Within seconds, she was on the phone, loudly declaring, "Yes, this is an emergency. There's a black man here with a little white girl. I don't think she's safe." Marcus felt the weight of every gaze in the park shift toward him. Parents pulled their children closer. Whispers rippled through the crowd. He knew what they were thinking, what they were assuming. And as the sound of approaching sirens echoed in the distance, Marcus's heart sank. He wasn't just a father anymore. He was a suspect, a man being judged not by his actions, but by the color of his skin. But what neither the woman nor the crowd realized was that this moment, fueled by ignorance and prejudice, was about to reveal a truth that would shatter every assumption they'd made. As the police car screeched to a stop, Marcus stood his ground. His heart pounded, but his expression remained calm. He wasn't new to this, being questioned, doubted, treated as less than. But what they didn't know, what she didn't know, was who Marcus Hayes really was. The officers approached cautiously, their hands resting on their belts. "Sir, we've had a report about a possible abduction," one of them said, their gaze flicking to Lily. "We need to ask you some questions." Marcus took a deep breath, crouching to Lily's level. "It's okay, baby girl. These men just want to make sure you're safe," he said, his voice soft and reassuring. Lily nodded, her tiny hand clutching his arm for support. Turning back to the officers, Marcus calmly handed over his ID and pulled out a folder from his bag. Inside was everything they needed to see: Lily's birth certificate, adoption papers, even a family photo. The officer's stern expression shifted as he reviewed the documents. "You're her father," he said, his voice softer now, tinged with regret. But it wasn't just the paperwork that silenced the growing crowd. It was the realization dawning in the officer's eyes as he looked up at Marcus. "Wait, are you Marcus Hayes, the child psychologist?" The murmurs started instantly, rippling through the onlookers. Some recognized his name, others began Googling it. Marcus wasn't just a father. He was a highly respected advocate for children in the foster care system, a man who had dedicated his life to giving kids like Lily a chance at a better future. And as the officer confirmed his identity, Marcus's calm exterior cracked just enough to let a touch of frustration slip through. "Yes, I'm Marcus Hayes, and this is my daughter, the little girl I fought 2 years in court to adopt. Maybe next time someone should ask before assuming the worst." The woman who had called the police took a step back, her face paling. She wasn't ready for what came next. The air in the park hung heavy with tension, but the drama was far from over. The officers had their answers, yet the woman wasn't backing down. "I don't care who he says he is," she snapped, her voice trembling with misplaced certainty. "How do we know those papers aren't fake? He could have stolen her." Marcus's jaw tightened, but he didn't lash out. He knew better than to let anger overshadow the truth. Instead, he stepped closer, his calm demeanor unshaken. "If you still have doubts, run a background check. I've got nothing to hide," he said, his eyes locking with the lead officer's. The officer hesitated, but after a nod from his partner, he called for verification. Meanwhile, the woman continued her tirade, now turning to the gathering crowd. "You all heard what she said. He's my daddy. Anyone could teach a child to say that." Lily, who had been quiet, suddenly spoke up, her voice small but defiant. "You're mean," she shouted, her eyes filling with tears. "He's my daddy, and he loves me more than anything." The crowd shifted uneasily. Whispers turned into questions, some directed at the woman. "Maybe she's telling the truth," one parent muttered. Another added, "If he's really who he says he is, this is a huge mistake." Minutes felt like hours as the officers waited for confirmation. Every second seemed to add another layer of doubt, another reason for Marcus to question how much more he had to prove himself. But just as the tension reached its breaking point, one of the officers' radios crackled to life. "Confirmation received," the voice said. "Marcus Hayes is who he claims to be. Licensed psychologist, cleared for adoption, no criminal record. He's the legal guardian of Lily Hayes." The lead officer turned back, his face a mix of relief and regret. But before he could speak, Marcus took a step forward, his voice calm but carrying the weight of years of silent battles. "Now that the truth is out," he said, "what happens to the people who assume they have the right to destroy someone's peace based on nothing but prejudice?" The woman opened her mouth, but no words came. Because the truth wasn't just about Marcus's innocence, it was about her guilt, and the reckoning was only beginning. Before the woman could stammer out a defense, the lead officer turned to her. "Ma'am," he said firmly, "we've verified everything. Marcus Hayes is not only this child's father, but a respected figure in child welfare. This call was completely unwarranted." The crowd began to murmur louder now, the tide of opinion shifting against her. Yet Marcus wasn't done. He reached into his bag again, pulling out a small photo album. "You want proof of who I am to Lily?" he said, holding the album up for everyone to see. "Let me show you something real." He opened the album, revealing snapshots of their life together. Lily's first day of kindergarten, her birthday party surrounded by friends, a quiet moment where she was nestled in his lap, fast asleep. Each picture told a story, not just of father and daughter, but of love, dedication, and sacrifice. 2 years, Marcus began, his voice strong but laden with emotion. "I fought 2 years in court for the right to be her father. I've faced people like you, judges, social workers, even strangers, who thought I wasn't right for her because of how we look. But Lily didn't care about my skin, and neither did I. All that mattered was that she needed a family, and I was ready to give her one." The woman's face turned crimson as the weight of her actions began to sink in. The crowd, once curious onlookers, now looked at her with disdain. One parent called out, "Maybe you should think twice before making assumptions about someone's life." But the real moment of reckoning came when Lily tugged on Marcus's sleeve, pointing to the woman. "Daddy," she said, her voice soft but clear, "why is she so angry? You always tell me to be kind to people who are different." The simplicity of Lily's words hit harder than any argument. The woman's bravado crumbled, her lips trembling as she realized the impact of her actions not just on Marcus, but on an innocent child. And as Marcus knelt to comfort Lily, his final words hung in the air like a judgment no one could escape. "Because sometimes," he said gently, "people forget that love doesn't look one way." The woman stood frozen, her phone still clutched in her hand, but her confidence shattered. The crowd, once silently complicit, now turned away from her, their whispers filled with condemnation. Marcus didn't gloat, didn't seek revenge. His focus was on Lily, wiping her tears and reminding her that everything was okay. The officers, clearly uncomfortable with the scene they had been dragged into, apologized to Marcus. "We're sorry for the misunderstanding," one said, but Marcus only nodded, his calm demeanor intact. "It's not the first time," he replied, "and sadly, it won't be the last. But maybe next time someone will think before acting on fear instead of facts." As Marcus and Lily walked away hand in hand, the weight of the moment lingered behind them. The woman who had started it all stood alone, her regret visible but unspoken. For Marcus, the day wasn't about proving anything to the world. It was about teaching Lily a lesson in resilience and grace. Later that night, as they read bedtime stories, he whispered to her, "Kindness will always be stronger than hate, even when it doesn't feel like it. Judgment based on appearances blinds us to the beauty of truth. Prejudice only divides, but love, real, unwavering love, can overcome even the deepest misunderstandings." This is the Justice Twist, where every story reminds us that truth and compassion are the ultimate equalizers.